All right, Saagar, what are you looking at?
Well, it's pretty cliche at this point to say that COVID accelerated all the pre-existing trends in America. Richest in America got a lot richer during COVID. Our already polarized country became a lot more polarized. Our consumer society consumed at levels it never has before. Our 40-year-long dedication to globalization over being a serious country became much worse. And in that vein, new data about family formation, children, and the foundation for most people's lives is just as unsettling. Before the pandemic, it was absolutely clear that marriage in America was becoming a luxury good. 2018 was the lowest marriage rate on record. And it's not that Americans didn't want to get married, it's that they reported that they simply could not afford to do so. The same held true for children. American women reported wanting up to 2.2 children on average, but they were only having around 1.7. The number one reason as to why they cited, it was cost. So what's going on here? Well, in crisis, where economic disparity was never more clear, what do you think happened? Fortunately, we have some data to actually see that. The Institute for Family Studies' new survey, it found that the most precipitous increases and decreases in getting married and having children after COVID is among the richest and the poorest in America. Right now, interest in family formation in America is highest amongst the rich. The desire to marry actually increased 9% amongst higher income Americans who aren't married. Among those who are lower income, it's only 2%. For having kids, the number is even more stark. Among lower income Americans, the desire to have kids has dropped a net 11 points. For the higher income, it increased net 1%. This is particularly bad for a number of reasons. Chief among them is that COVID just accelerated and possibly ended one of the more interesting data points that we've always had when you look at family formation. Poorer Americans, and indeed poorer people across the globe, despite not having the means necessarily, always have more kids than many other segments of society. Children were seen as both a safety net in older age, but also often for these people who sought more satisfaction in children than in material goods. With COVID, it seems that trend is beginning to decrease and childlessness is beginning to rise amongst the less educated, lower income Americans, with gas just poured on the fire. Look even further. You could say, okay, Saagar, who cares? We're just leaving aside that the civilization's most basic job is to replace itself. Maybe you'll recall, though, that other monologue I did on the crisis of American men. What stuck out most to me from reviewing the data on rising single male population of the United States is just how miserable it makes everyone. Declining single male wages over the last 30 years have made many men in America much less desirable partners. This leads to less coupling. Less coupling that we know from the data leads to better economic fortunes for both people. It leads to educational attainment. It leads to better health outcomes for both partners. It leads to better self-reported happiness all across the board. But the forces in our society are pulling people away from this. Economically, it's actually never been harder than ever to get married. Take a look at this, seriously. The average wedding cost in 2019, before the pandemic, was $28,000. $28,000. That is pre-tax income of about 1/4 of this entire country in the course of a year. The average wedding venue right now alone is $10,000. How about childbirth? Well, in 2020, the average cost of childbirth for a person with employer-sponsored health insurance was $13,811. The out-of-pocket cost for an individual with employer-based health care is $1,000 to $2,500 per kid. But then consider the actual cost of raising a child. Right now, the average cost, through age 17, is $233,610, or an additional $13,000 per year. If you want to include college, that obviously exponentially increases. It is no wonder that in an economy where wages have stayed flat for 30 years, that people don't want to have children. Now, it may seem crass to discuss things in this way, but all the current evidence points to the fact that we have both had a cultural shift and an economic one. But the problem is, we've been celebrating that cultural shift for so long, we ignored the economic drift. The problems of the 1950s are mostly dead. Women in America have been able to and continue to work at the levels that they choose to since the 1990s. And since the 90s, we've instead constructed an economic system which devalues wages and economic opportunity for middle-class people of both genders, but especially the poor. The American dream was and is simple. If you work hard, you can have children and get married and live in a moderately comfortable life in a setting that you choose. That could be where you grew up, it could be thousands of miles away. But that opportunity was supposed to be ubiquitous wherever you were. Instead, opportunity today is really only ubiquitous for the social group for whom the entire economy is structured, the richest people in America. The dream is alive for them precisely at the expense of the middle and the poorer classes. A common question I get when I discuss this is, Saagar, how do you even know this isn't an entirely cultural phenomenon? How much of this is even economic? I've got an easy way to find out. Let's remove the economic barriers to people and just see what happens.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it, you get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.